Talk is here. Power 102 Digital.
This is Hard Talk, Power 102 Digital Wednesday with our host, Fareed Ali. I'm standing by to bring Fareed is here. Of course, good afternoon, Fareed. How are you?
Good afternoon, David. It's great to be here. To the listening public, we are supposed to have Professor Selwyn Cudjoe on today for a discussion, for a conversation about his views in terms of um, the not just the politics in Trinidad and Tobago, but uh, just a social commentary on how things are evolving. Um, I know that he had some, if I may put it, strident and strong opinions that he expressed in a UNC Monday night meeting some weeks ago, and our Prime Minister responded accordingly. But it's always good to see that we have fresh views and fresh ideas, you know, in the public space. Dr. Cudjoe or Professor Cudjoe should be joining us shortly, David. So hopefully once he works out his connectivity issue, he is abroad. He's not within the jurisdiction, so he has a connectivity issue there. We should be live. But whilst we are waiting Dr. Cudjoe, Professor Cudjoe, maybe we could chat about some of the things that are trending. How's your pan experience being since Carnival is over?
Well, things are a bit quiet now where that is concerned, but I know we have a show coming up soon where they're going to pay tribute to Dr. Leroy Callis, the late Black Stallion. And it will be putting Andy Narell in the spotlight. And I don't want to say too much about that, but that's a sort of a concert that's all set for later down in the month. And I know it will be a very nice concert, but where Pan is concerned, I move around a little bit and see some of the Panyards are quiet, nothing really is happening where Pan is concerned, but I keep them on the front burner. I always look forward to having some sort of chat with them. My grandsons play with Sand City, so I'm kind of closely monitoring the movement of Sand City, and I hope that they can step up their game this year and try their best to lobby for a better Panyard and so on and stuff. But it's kind of quiet now that we're into the Lenten season. I guess things will probably start to come front when the Easter vacation draws nearer. We also have the Point Fountain Borough celebrations. That is Carnival Part 2 that has Pan on the day. The Saturday is mostly dedicated to Pan on the road. So that is something I look forward to. It's on the Saturday after Juve. They have traditional mass presentations, and they parade the streets, and we have Pan on the move all day after the Juve and the traditional mass. So right after that, we have a lot of the big bands will come down to Point Fortin, and it's always a grand affair. It has been from initial stages where the moment they brought it in, it started like that in the first place, mostly about Pan on the move, and then it generated into the Juve, and it's like a mini carnival celebration with fetes in the lead up to the carnival. It's like that. To the lead up of Borough Day, there's lots of fetes and staple fetes, fetes that you can expect. So during the Borough celebrations, a lot of Pan music will be played and for people to enjoy. A lot of people come to Point Fortin. A lot of foreigners. Like I said, it's a Carnival Part 2 in the real sense of it. And we look forward to that each and every year. So if you want to hear a lot of Pan and a lot of Pan music on the road, but yes, that's the place to be.
I know that Supernovas in the East on April 6th, they are having a day in Surrey. It's an annual yearly thing each where they have a day where they invite several of the bands. I know that phase 2 will be there, Exodus will be there in Surrey Village, Lupino. So I guess to the listening public, there's something to look forward to on the 6th of April. It's Saturday, the 6th of April, 2024.
Great.
They have a Facebook page, so a lot of what is happening there would be beaming on social media, if we put it that way.
Yeah.
I know Dr. Holman and all, Dr. Ray Holman, who we featured from time to time.
Yeah.
He has a musical at phase 2 Pan Groove in the village in the first week of April. So there are a number of Pan productions, particularly in the month of April. So there's a lot to look forward to Pan wise.
Right. Happy to hear that. I have to link up with Dr. Holman. That's my good buddy, and I'll find out more about it.
Is there a date on the remembrance of Black Stallion for that program, that show?
Well, I have it here on my phone. Let me see if I can pull it up for you. I didn't want to give them too much of promotion, but it's happening. Let me see when it's happening. Yes. Okay, March the 30th. All right. So it's March the 30th, a Kaiso Jazz Experience with the likes of Andy Narell and all of the different stars, Leandra, and so it will be a fantastic showcasing, because I like Andy Narell's attitude towards pan play. He and Ray Holman and the Sugar Fingers, Robert Greenidge, these are spectacular players when it comes to showcasing the way they play pans, that pan play, that professional touch that they have. They have a master. They are masters at the art form. So I look forward to that. So it's on March the 30th at Sound Forge, right? So it's the Kaiso Jazz Experience. That's going to be fantastic.
Just a reminder to the public, today I'm hoping to have live Dr. Selwyn Cudjoe. Hopefully he can work out his some difficulties he's having tuning in live. The thing with the technology is I only sound like I'm on top of things, David. Without help around me here, I can't do anything. I can't
I fight up with it a lot too.
I'm lucky that I have someone who assists me with everything every day. So sometimes when we have very senior guests, they themselves need some assistance on their end, but if it's not forthcoming, then we have some connectivity issues in that regard. I don't like to talk politics at all. But,
neither do I. Neither do I. But in some form and fashion, we do comment in our own space.
It seeps in.
Yes. But I look at it from a social point of view. And from a social point of view, it can sound very, very political too, So I will take it from that angle, and hopefully that
I was reading recently that I find this thing so disturbing. And they said between January 2019, and when I say that's the editorial in the newspaper I was reading, a psychologist was speaking, and they were saying between January 2019 and December 2023. We had in this country 400 suicide attempts.
My God.
So I say, but that's a lot of people trying to take their life.
Yeah.
Now, for the listening public, any attempt at suicide is a criminal offense, a jailable criminal offense to attempt to take your life.
Yes.
Dr. Cudjoe, Professor Cudjoe.
Yes, he is here with us now.
Professor Cudjoe, thank you for. We just need your volume now.
Yeah, please unmute your microphone.
It's good to make contact with him. I was hoping that we didn't have any serious difficulty where we couldn't connect. So we're doing it in good time.
Yeah. You need to unmute your microphone if you're hearing me.
All
I
right.
think
Are you
he's.
hearing me now?
Okay, right.
We're hearing you.
Yeah,
We're
we
hearing
hear
you.
you.
Luckily, we have 3 devices. All right.
Great to see you.
Same here.
We if it is you're in a position where you could your paper, your hand. Okay, good.
I can move my hand.
If you could reposition your phone, wonderful. The vision is good now. We're right there where we're supposed to be.
Okay.
Okay, wonderful. I want to say thank you, Professor Cudjoe, for making yourself available to us. I know that I contacted you a few days ago. I was reaching out, but we only made contact voice to voice yesterday afternoon, and you were so willing and available. So thank you so much for doing so. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Farid Ali. I am a presenter on 102 FM, which is now Digital 102 Radio. We're online. So we would have been formerly 102 FM Radio. We have this weekly program which you're a part of in terms of your guests today. And we just basically invite persons like yourself, well-rounded, well-educated individuals, a professor, just to share your view in terms of your social commentary based on your observations as to things in Trinidad. I know that you've been in the public space for many, many years. And I read your editorial from week to week. So basically, I thought that it would be great to have you. I myself, on a personal note, don't like to engage too much in the political exchanges and get too deep into the politics because it's so acerbic in this country, and people get high-tempered and very emotional. But I think with a guest like yourself, we can't. The discussion could only be scholarship. Well, I could be scholastic. So if I may ask, we always ask our guests some cultural questions. I know that you have your roots in Trinidad and Tobago. You're here most times. What steel band do you celebrate or that you support?
I'm not a steel band fan. I couldn't tell the difference between All Stars or somebody else. I have friends who could do that. I cannot do that. I can't even keep time, so I don't have a particular. I know a lot of friends in All Stars and that stuff. I'm not a steel band fella.
Okay. Oh, I could accept that. What about the calypso? You're into the calypso social commentary, listening to
I guess I like the older folks. I don't know much of the younger folks, but Marshall Montano, I think, and I like Sugar Aloes, and I like Sugar Aloes. Yes. Who else? I don't know. I know the older guys. And if some song that hits me, I'm fine with that. Yeah. I prefer reggae. I prefer Bob Marley. So.
I recently saw that there's a movie celebrating his life that they're gonna release soon.
No, you're wrong, brother. It's been released. It's in Trinidad right now. Somebody told me to saw it. I saw it about 2 weeks ago. So it's been released.
Okay. Well, I too like reggae, but it's seasonal for me. It depends on if I'm traveling. You tend to hear a lot of reggae if you're in the States and in Europe. Here, it's more dancehall.
Okay.
But all the same. I wanted to just pick your brain in terms of there's much in the public space. We are entering into that period where we should have a general election in Trinidad and Tobago at least minimally by September 2025.
Is that so quickly? Okay.
Yeah, so we should be about 18 months away. And we all know when we get into that 12-month period, the build up, let's say from January into September, thereabout. It might even start before that in October month. Mm-hmm. People tend to focus on, the exchanges and what takes place and what one party is offering that the other isn't. I know that you've had your say in terms of your views on how things should be done and how it should be conducted in terms of crime and in terms of what can be done. Tell me something. Our politics here, in terms of our Whitehall Westminster model, constitutionally, the way the politics is set up, we basically it's all about parties. Political parties make themselves available. Traditionally, in the past, it would have been the DLP and the PNM. Mm-hmm. Then the DLP morphed into different elements, meaning the ULF. Then we had the ONR. We had the NAR. Now we have the UNC. The one consistent force in Trinidad and Tobago's politics has always been the PNM. What they've always said is that the PNM is the one consistent party with an ideological base that has not changed through the years, that everybody else would have been, as we say in colloquial language, a set of pickup teams that try to contest the PNM, and for all intents and purposes, they've never actually hold on to the reins of power long enough in the context of the PNM and how they did their thing. Between 1956 and 1986, we had 30 consecutive years of PNM controlling the reins of central government.
But there's nothing unusual about that. I mean, the PNM was the party that came out of independence. You'd have the same thing in South Africa. You'd have the same thing in India. The National Congress in India ruled for a long time before Modi came in. The same thing is true in South Africa. So that the question of the party that carries the country forward into independence holds on a long time before people became disenchanted. So that's not an unusual phenomenon at all. It happens all over the place. Because the Nationalist Party sort of embodies your hopes and your dreams. And so what happens is that you tend to stay with them until they get stale. It happened with PNM. And after people get tired, well, of course, Williams died. They put on NAR. And then after NAR, the interesting thing to do is after the NAR's victory, see how many times the government has changed. It's changed a number of times. So I don't think that's unusual. I think that's what any modern politics does. I say it was true in the United States until they put in a limit in terms of how long a president could start. I mean, up in the 40s, I mean, Roosevelt had 3 terms. So there's nothing unusual about that. No, I don't. There's nothing unusual about that. But continue your narrative.
Dr. Eric Williams had once said that if he sends a crap war in a constituency, he's likely to win. I guess what he basically was stating is that the PNM is so strong in Trinidad and Tobago that it doesn't matter who is contesting the PNM.
I think you got to be careful. I mean, I don't want to interrupt you. Yes, he said that in the first years when he was in power, up until that first 20 years. If we look at the history of had an interchange of parties, the UNC has ruled sometime. The PNM is the uninterrupted rule of the PNM after 1981, I think, when or 82, or 86, whenever NAR came to power. It's been an interchange. So it's not true you could put up a crap on and go win. I mean, that's not necessarily true.
Right, I'm agreeing with you.
Okay.
That was once said, but that was said in the context of an era when the PNM would win a landslide victories in terms of the elections. That happened in 56, it happened again in 61, it happened in 66, 71, 76.
Yeah.
So we've always had traditionally that the PNM...
But you're not Farid, but I don't think you're doing it. You're not getting me. When Nelson Mandela and the ANC took South Africa into power, no other parties ruled since they came into power, because the ANC represented their aspirations and their hopes. Now they're getting some trouble. I mean, they're now, having problems, but no other parties ruled. The same thing was true with Gandhi. If you go to India, you have the same problem in the National Congress with the Gandhis, the son, the daughter, everybody, until it was broken. And they got independence in 47. So I'm saying that seems to be a traditional pattern. There's nothing unique about PNM in that sense. It's a people's nationalist movement. The African National Congress. And you go on. So I'm just saying you have to be careful about that analysis, because the party that takes you into independence, as I just showed you India and I just showed you South Africa, is the one which initially, until people get tired and that they're not delivering their services. The same is true of the PNM. No?
Given the fact that we've had in the past, perhaps generally the last 2 elections, it happened perhaps through the last 4, which is within the year 2000 moving forward. Okay. We have narrower majorities. It means that both parties, in order to have bills passed into law, would need the support of the other party, meaning the PNM, when they're in power, they need the support of the opposition.
For certain bills. I mean, some bills
certain-
you need a 2/3 or whatever. Yes, that's true.
Yeah. What is your view in terms of the need for constitutional reform? Is it? Do you think it's healthy that we need to revisit the Constitution and seek to change certain provisions in order to make it more applicable to the social state of Trinidad and Tobago now? Do you think that there's a need for changing the system?
Yeah, there's always a need. I mean, you look at the American Constitution, comes into being in 1787. And then what you do after, you have amendments added on to it. The French Republic, as you go to France, is the fifth republic. They've had 5 constitutions. So they're not sick. They're always chance being transformed. So, I mean, again, yes, because any constitution could only speak to its time. You do it in an American case, and what I said, what it was, 1887, and then they've changed it because there are new sets of circumstances. When the American Constitution started, for example, there was no such thing a president only have 2 terms. That comes in 1960, in the 40s, when a guy like Roosevelt had 3 terms. He said, no, let's keep it at 2. So they're always changing because the circumstances are changing. So yes, it's a healthy thing. But I think what's important on this time is, well, what changes do we see in terms of? And I thought that I don't think that the government did a good job. I mean, if you're going to put out a constitution or whatever, you're going to change it. You need to say what. Sometimes you have what we call a green paper. They say these are the problems. We haven't had that. Mr. Rowley, in this case, has a guy like Sinanan, who he says, okay, you're in charge of that committee, but Sinanan is not a constitutional lawyer. Sinanan is a real estate man. Why would he put a real estate man in charge of a constitution when there's so many other good constitutional lawyers? So it seems to me sometimes we just do the wrong thing at the wrong time. But that there should be a look at the Constitution. I think we should. And I think what happened when we got independence so very swiftly. If you remember how we got independence, you had a West Indian Federation. And the federation broke up, and then each country began to scramble to have its own constitution. And in some cases, it took a few months. I mean, in terms of our case, I guess the guy who wrote up the constitution was, of course, I think Ellis Clark, and he just took the same British constitution, make a little changes, and said, "Here we got a new constitution." Of course, then there was, of course, I think the Republican constitution, where Ryan and others went around the country seeking advice and people making their own changes. So that I think we have to, probably time has come where we could sit down and say what we need. But again, I mean, Mr. Rowley says on this one, with Sinanan, they're just going to get ideas and then they're going to have the real thing. I mean, I don't know what that means. But to answer your question, yes, I think you always have to take a look at the Constitution and see whether it's relevant in the sense of, is it responding to the needs of the people? And I think that's what the question is going to be here now. So yes, your question is yes, we need to take a look at constitutions, yeah.
When we examine some of the saved laws, some of the saved laws, some of the laws that were pre-existing the independence of Tobago would have been laws passed under the British, and some of those laws inclusive of the Sedition Act. That act more or less was an act that came into being, that was passed into law, that contained provisions where the British Crown simply had legislation in place to control persons who they were of the view that were a threat to the state. Meaning, if you have anyone who spoke out of turn or who spoke in terms of challenging the establishment, that there was legislation in place where punitive measures could be taken against them. That sort of approach impacted even on the Calypsonian and the artists, the cultural artists. So when a Calypsonian sings against the colonial governor, his songs could be banned. He could not perform intense. He couldn't allow that sort of music played in the public space. But that's just from the position of culture. If you have Butler found himself in some in issues with the British Crown in relation to same when in the 1930s with regard to the protestations and that he was took the forefront and in terms of leading the working class. He met some hurdles dealing with them in that regard. Are you of the view, and recently that Sedition Act was challenged in the court and it was treated as it is saved law and therefore it is applicable. When Watson Duke had said certain things, he was charged under the Sedition Act. The court said that in any modern democracy, laws of this nature ought to be addressed by the parliament. The parliament's position was that this is all part of saved law and they're not prepared to address their mindset. And are you of the view that there are certain specific piece of legislation, and using the Sedition Act as an example, are you of the view that there are certain pieces of legislation that we as a modern republic, a democracy, should address our minds to? We've seen that happen in a number of instances in other areas.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think I follow your trend, but the fact of the matter is, any government that's in power wants to stay in power. What Butler did, he threatened the order, threatened the British order, and so therefore they had to keep themselves in place. The same thing is true of the Black Power revolts that we had in '69 when William Jondo spoke up and took them down the islands. So the function of any government is to stay in power. So I don't know what you do with that. I mean, but the government must have powers to keep the state orderly. You just can't do what you want to do. So the question is how you work that out. But there has to be something that says you can't disrupt the state, the well-being of others, and there are no consequences. So that I have no problems in terms of, I don't know what you could do with it. I mean, you could probably modify it. But there has to be some way of, you just can't go around and shoot people. You can't go around and just invade people's homes. The state must have, and that's the whole only reason why you have a government. A government does what an individual cannot do. That's why you have a police force. An individual can't stop somebody from raiding their homes. So you have a police force, and they then act on behalf and for the welfare and well-being of the people. So yes, I mean, that may be, I don't know if that's the best example of why, you should have some of these laws change. I mean, I love Crow. I mean, I love him very much. But I think the ruling was you can't assassinate somebody's character. And you got to be careful what you do. You have to do it subtly. If I come and say that Fayed Ali is a thief, and I do it in song and so on, well, you got to say, well, what evidence do you have? You don't have a right to malign my name. And the court, there must be some way, somebody or something to adjudicate. Yeah. In the absence of a court to adjudicate, you have chaos. So that's what that tries to do. I don't know how best, I don't think in terms of banning books and all that kind of good stuff, but there's sitting in terms of sound and ridicule and so on, there has to be limits. I don't know where you draw the line. It might be that sometimes the calypsonians have to be a little more subtle. But you gotta be, it can't, what is the opposite of freedom is license. The opposite of freedom is license. And license is to do what you want to do anytime you want to do it. You play your music as loudly as possible. Forget who's sleeping across the street. So you don't want license. What you want is freedom. But what is freedom? Well, freedom is what we say in philosophy. Freedom is an understanding of necessity. And by that we mean that which you could do but doesn't harm others, if you want to call it that. For example, you could go on the top of the Red House and throw yourself down. That's freedom. But there are consequences. So it's a dialectical problem. It's not just because if I said to Farid, who are you? Well, Farid is a social being. And you come into being not because of yourself. It's you're kind of being in light of others. You don't exist by yourself. So that's always a ticklish question for any democracy. How do you balance the rights of the individual to express himself or herself and of course, you protect the right of people not to be maligned by others. A government also wants to stay, because if you say the theory of democracy is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, and the people have elected XYZ, then you who decided so I do not have a right to overthrow them. You go to wait for another election and get rid of them. So there has to be those kinds of limits. Else you just have chaos. And if you're watching the United States very carefully, let's see what's going to happen with Trump.
If we look at the Cudjoe situation, that ruling that went against him, in our history, that is a contemporary example of something that transpired between Basdeo Panday and Ken Gordon many years ago. If you remember correctly,
Ken Gordon had to pay some money.
Well, actually, Basdeo Panday had to pay some money.
Basdeo Panday. Ken Gordon.
Yeah, he said he referred to Ken Gordon as a pseudo-racist. Mm-hmm. And naturally, Mr. Gordon would have taken umbrage with regard to that. The matter went before the court. And the court ruling is that the comment by Mr. Panday impacted upon the good name, the good corporate name of Mr. Gordon. And it was a ruling along the lines of, you're free to express yourself. We have freedom of speech here, where you're constitutionally you can freely express yourself, but you can't do so in a manner that compromises the health of somebody else's good name and and reputation. So naturally, the matter, after it was appealed, the Court of Appeal reinforced the judgment in terms of holding Basdeo Panday accountable for the things that he said. In similar manner, I guess, when we look at the modern example with Cudjoe, Cudjoe may be free to express himself, but he can't attack the good name of a businessman if it is you're making an assertion that cannot be substantiated in fact. So in that regard, he found himself in some difficulty.
Yeah, but we're agreeing. So I don't know. We're agreeing. That's
we're agreeing on that.
Your freedom of speech. The freedom is not licensed. There are responsibilities, freedom and responsibility, and you have to accept your responsibility because you don't live in a world by yourself. So we both agree. Yes, I think.
Yeah, but in addressing the issue of whether there are certain laws that perhaps needs to be revisited, even in contemporary America, the issue of inclusivity and accepting that persons of a certain orientation and their beliefs and their life practices, that is something in any modern democracy we ought to embrace. We had a ruling, Jason Jones, 2 years ago in Trinidad and Tobago, where Jason Jones, who took umbrage by the fact that within our Sexual Offences Act, that it was an offense under a particular section 12, it spoke to the fact that the buggery laws holds one accountable for that sort of activity. And in any modern democracy, we should respect the freedom of choice of consenting adults. The ruling simply, the court's ruling was that it was of the view that that particular section that spoke out against buggery, which is adult and adult sexual acts of a particular nature, that in itself is a breach of the contemporary and the constitutional right of an individual in terms of their.
I don't understand that. I don't understand what you mean by that. These are two consenting individuals, no?
Right. Yes, it was.
So,
but
our
problem?
Laws. What's the problem?
The truth is
it's backward. It's backward.
Great.
It's backward.
But our parliament, the court said so, that it is backward. But our parliament was referred to our parliament that we need to adjust the law in terms of tweak that piece of legislation or address our minds to the fact that we have a piece of legislation there that is problematic. If we look at our Immigration Act, Trinidad and Tobago's Immigration Act section
let's keep it one at a time. I mean, where are you going with the question of the buggery? Before you go to immigration.
Yeah. Well, I was tying it in there. There's a similarity. Our legislation under the Immigration Act Section 8 speaks to the fact that homosexuals should not be allowed into our country. It is as blatant and as clean as that. So you can be barred from entering Trinidad and Tobago if it is you're a homosexual.
Yeah.
So even when we look at the marriage of our different legislation and provisions specific to each, there are things that are less, or that are the antipathy of inclusivity.
It's not inclusive. I mean, these are just backward laws. I mean, we were, in fact, quote unquote, a Christian civilization. And those things, I mean, we had all those biases. In this day and age, you can't say somebody cannot enter a country. Well, you could say it, but it wouldn't be in terms of the violation of that person's human rights. But of course, once again, a country got to go by the country's law. If you're asking me what's my position on those things, my sense is very backward. You can't say somebody cannot come in a country because they're homosexual. That's stupid.
Right.
Silly. I mean, there's no big thing there. Now, I've got friends who don't agree with me. They say stone them. I mean, you have some friends, it's like the death penalty. Some people says hang them. Right. I mean, so there are these differences. But if you're asking what my thoughts are, I'm of the view that I have. I work at a women's cart for 30 years. And the question how one saw homosexuality 30 years ago and how one sees homosexuality is just different. But we must always, the right of people, the consenting individuals to have certain behaviors within their homes and whatever is up to them. And there's no reason why we should be promoting the notion that heterosexuality is somehow different or much more, better than, or that's nonsense. I mean, so I don't agree with all of that. My friends will get angry. Some will get angry. I don't go for all that stuff.
But it would mean that, and I don't know if you were going to with me. I think you already did. We need to address our minds to laws that are consistent with changing times, laws that are consistent with the pulse of where the world is at now.
It's not pulse. It's not it has. I don't want to just say necessarily pulse of where the world is at. I think it's what constitutes freedom. That's the problem. If the goal of humankind has certainly been to give people the right. I mean, there are times when you can do something. I mean, when I taught at Tagragouisi many years ago, probably 40, 50 years ago. If you were unmarried and you're having a baby, you lost your job. Plain and simple. Because the church thought it was, illegitimate. I mean, one of the things the Williams get rid of, to get that stuff off of your birth certificate. And so the question is that people should have the right, the questions of abortion. I mean, they could also say you can't have abortion in Trinidad because the Catholic can like it or somebody can like it. And our position, certainly my position, that really is backward. If a woman should have the right to control her body. I mean, so so it's not so much what the time is. The question is, what kinds of behaviors help us to realize our own sense of freedom? And that there's some things, particularly say with a woman's body. If a woman, even your wife, for that matter, come and say, Farid, I'm having a baby and I want to have it, and you said, don't have it, you can't have it. I mean, you can say what you want to say. There's a time when, for example, there was not rape in sex, in consent. If you have a wife, you can't rape your wife. That was many years. That's not true now. So the question is the question of people's freedom, people having the right to express themselves and behave in ways. Once it's not antithetical to or doesn't hurt anyone, I think that probably should be the criteria. But that's a way of moving towards making people more free in the sense of expressing themselves and being themselves and realizing themselves in the short journey that we have here called life.
Abortion in Trinidad and Tobago is illegal.
Is it illegal? Is it illegal?
It's illegal. And doctors that facilitate these sort of things could lose their license to practice.
It could be put in prison, I guess.
Now, if there's an issue where you have to save the mother's life, then that is something totally different. That means that in order to preserve the mother's life, one has to procure an abortion. Then it may become necessary, but you have to justify it in the context of a decision has to be made between saving the mother's life and treating with the pregnancy. So your view is, I'm just trying to crystallize that in my mind's eye. Your view is that you should have a family should have freedom of choice, meaning
Let a
that
family, forget families. A woman has the right to control her own body. The state should not be saying to you, you can't have you can't have an abortion. You don't know what your family situation is. No, it goes back to your own religious beliefs. Uh, excuse me. I just think here in probably in Alabama, where some judge who believed in Jesus Christ said that a fetus or whatever egg is as a human being. I mean, it gets ridiculous. So my thing is, I mean, it's kind of almost unfettered. A woman should have the right to decide what she wants to do with her body. Period. And any state that says you can't have an abortion, that state is a backward state. You're silly. How you gonna tell a woman don't have a baby? You the sick and say you can't have an abortion? Come on. I don't go for that.
but you would agree with me that in Trinidad and Tobago, the church has a big say in how the state conducts its affairs, meaning that Parliament tends to get guidance from the stakeholders and the
No,
Catholic.
Parliament, of course, is scared of the state. No, I mean, the Parliament, I mean, they dictate by, I mean, the bishop, what the bishop says, or the archbishop, and some of the people are Catholics and so on. I mean, and we don't have the kind of moral fortitude to say some things. I mean, I like the separation of church and state. Church, do your thing, leave the non-state, not non-religious things to us. But in many cases, you have people who are probably of that. No, there are people who really genuinely believe that it's wrong. People who believe that, we have to respect that. But you're asking me, and I think that I can't see it. But again, I'm not quite up in the mainstream,
Yeah. In Trinidad and Tobago, it's a proven fact that given that we are a very small society of just 1 million people, just some say 1.2 million.
I think it's 1.4, not 1.4 million.
I think the latest CSO report was 1.4 million.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
With that sort of figure, it's a small society. The church and religious bodies tend to have a big say in terms of their voice. They are the stakeholders that are consulted.
Yeah.
So they impact on how our politicians act when they're in Parliament. There are things that clearly we've seen legislatively from what we've discussed so far. There's no way that the Catholic Church is going to support certain pieces of legislation that condones. For instance, we talked about the Sexual Offences Act and consenting adults with regard to burglary and so on. Abortion. Those are heavy issues on the agenda of the Catholic Church. In no way would they support.
Yeah.
Do you appreciate the fact that our politics in Trinidad and Tobago is heavily influenced by factors such as the church, where the church will dictate and determine how our politicians react and respond?
I mean, but you gotta love the fact that some politicians just believe that. However the church believe you're a good Christian or good Catholic, you just believe that. So what you're doing, you're not acting at the behest of the church or under pressure from the church. You're acting what you think your conscience says. I mean, that's your own religious beliefs. So some are, and some have the thing of the church. But remember that some people have different views. You have a parliament. You have some Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Pentecostals. And people have different views. So it might be the church, but it might be also be individuals who believe in those things.
What is your view in terms of our electoral system? Do you think that first past the post, which is the system we've grown and bred in Trinidad and Tobago, is an effective mechanism for determining who should assume the reins of power? Or do you think that we should address our minds to proportional representation, given the dichotomy in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of the Indo-Afro percentages?
But if you're going to proportion, you have other people, you have mixed people, you got Portuguese and all that stuff. So I don't know what you can do with that. So I guess you're going to have your bit for proportionals for the Chinese and for the Portuguese. My position is, I come down with Eric Williams. I don't think there should be a proportional representation. Certainly not at the highest level of government, because it means that the society will always be divided. The poor is going to get their own, the blacks going to get their own, the Indians going to get their own, and we never speak as one people. So I'm not for proportional representation. Certainly not at the highest level of government.
I was looking at an.
I think it perpetuates division.
All right. You know, naturally, in having you here, I can't escape referring to some of the things you've put into the public space in terms of your characterization of the Prime Minister. I want to quote you here, and I don't want to just make a comment without quoting what I'm reading from the editorial. In one article here, it's dated the 27th of January 2024, so that's quite recent. The rubric is Rowley cannot solve our crime problem. And I'm just quoting very briefly a very small paragraph. It is said, and this is me quoting you from what I'm reading in the Express newspaper, Keith Rowley and his government will not solve our growing crime problem for the simple reason that Rowley has become a part of the problem rather than part of a solution. He is much too arrogant, indecisive, ill-disciplined, and uninspirational to lead such a vital national effort, quote and unquote. Would you agree with me that the same could be said of the leader of the opposition, which is Kamala Persad-Bissessar?
No, I don't. I don't agree with that.
Why would you characterize Dr. Rowley in that manner? Meaning, if I may be so bold to ask you if you can develop that.
You just told me to hold my behind in public debate. You could have any leader saying to a public citizen, hold your ass, hold your behind, and something like that. That's arrogant. It's rude. It's not even acceptable. I could not, as a professor, tell my student to hold their ass. I don't care how objectionable the person's position is. That's not acceptable in polite societies. That's a person who has reason to say, no brought up see. You're rude. You're arrogant. You almost, I call it, I'm going to write about it on Sunday, because that's excessive narcissism. And what's worse about something like that, the religious leaders, nobody came out and objected to that. And my point is, and that's that verbal violence is just as bad as physical violence. You're egging the population on. That's what people like Hitler and the Bronx and those guys, Mussolini did. So no, I mean, it's not sometimes you've seen the evidence. Do you agree with that? That's how you conduct public discourse. You're just asking about constitutional reform. Yeah. You have a constitutional committee, and you're going to say that if somebody don't like their ass, I don't do that. So no, I think everything I said, nobody responded incidentally, which means that probably people seem to agree. And it was number one in the papers for a long while. So I think it's correct. I just think that what happens, that's not our problem. My problem is that we are afraid to speak. We are afraid to speak out. For somehow reason we're scared. What are you scared of? Bob Marley says, the biggest man you ever see was once a baby. The biggest man you ever see was once a baby. And like he and you and I, we're going to die. So why are you afraid of people? You're wrong. If you have a wife or you have a spouse or you have a partner, you don't agree on everything. Something to disagree on, just simply food. So yes, I think he's arrogant, and I think that he has no decency. He's vulgar. He's a vulgar man.
Right. I'm with you in what you're saying. Not that my personal opinion follows, but I share your sentiment in terms of what he said there was uncouth and uncalled for. I don't think that any leader, when met with someone who has a varying opinion or a diametrically opposing opinion, should greet that voice with that sort of.
And that's the first point. The second point was that you take one point, and I mean, of course, it's not even a proper reading of the text. I am a literary scholar. It's not even a reading of a text. You take the 16 point and says, what's that? Right. So it means intellectually dishonest. You can't take one point and say that was what he said. I wouldn't say that. And more important, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
I asked her question. So, but the point about it, we're all scared to talk. If somebody is vulgar and rude, you must say you're vulgar and rude. If it comes from the head of the party, the leader of your party, you think Queen Elizabeth, when she was alive, could say, go haul your behind, the Queen? She sets the tone of the nation. That's what presidents do. And you told me the young people, and you get mad when young people begin a fight and somebody get in a rage and pull a gun? They get in a rage, pull a gun, and you say they're criminals. But you curse
Are you
somebody
of
out
the,
and you're decent. No, we are contradictory. And part of the problem, not just Mr. Rowley, are those people who are scared to speak out and say, this is not acceptable. That's the problem. We all are scared. We have no gumption. That's my position.
are you of the view that maybe when you called him out in terms of your crime plan and the points that you raised, that he felt that he was cornered, and like any animal who's cornered, he scratches out and lashes out in any which way. It simply could be that,
There's not
that,
simple. Don't put in that simple. Don't put that word simple. What do you mean simple? You're the
well,
leader.
yeah, I follow you.
You're
Yeah.
the leader. What is simple? You have to demonstrate your behavior. What will you do? See if you see a prime minister smoking weed or making love in the street openly. What are you gonna say? You just had some whatever. It's simple. No, you're always, ever the leader. You always conduct yourself in a certain kind of way. Particular time when we have so much crime in the country. What example do you set? There's no excuse for it. And we must say that. That's my point. We must say it. I'm not afraid to say it. I hope there were a few people who are not afraid to speak. But then they become complicit in the degeneracy of the society. They become complicit in the degeneracy of the society. So no, I call it as I think. I said it, and I in fact, but I've been saying those things, years ago. This is not the first time.
Right. Well, I'm agreeing with you that any leader and any person in the
Would you cuss your children? You have children?
Yes, but I don't use obscene language.
All right, so you're gonna cuss your children? They're gonna cuss you just back. They're gonna cuss you back just now. You don't do it. You're the dad. You carry yourself in a certain way.
Well, I'm agreeing with you that once you're in a position of leadership, then a higher responsibility lies with you as leader to conduct yourself in a manner that those who are following you would follow by example. Because if it is he's responding in that way, in that manner, then those persons that are supporting him and the party electorally, they may feel that it's perfectly okay for them to conduct themselves in like manner. So the signal he's sending, or he may be sending, may be a negative signal. Perhaps now that he revisited what he said in his mind's eye, I'm sure he reflects. He may have something to say. Hopefully, he may want to recant on what he said there.
You don't know that. You don't know that. For guys who believe that they're correct, you see, what happens when you become a leader, sometimes you get carried away, your head get big. Everybody say, oh, wonderful, Mr. Prime. Oh, everybody thinks it's the best thing that happened to sliced bread. And Shakespeare talked about that. Yeah, it's a normal problem. So I don't know if you want to look back and whatever. He said his thing and he's gone. And I suppose, yeah, right, yeah, go on. Yeah. That's a lead. Just hear me again. That's the road to fascism. When Hitler spoke, when I've been to Germany, I saw the big stadium where Hitler would speak. I respect Hitler. And before you know it, you have 6 million Jews killed. The Bronx sure is the same thing in Italy. Come on now. I mean, you guys don't think. And he said, why we have so much crime? And yes, we're going to have more crime.
Right.
We'll have more crime. Yes, sorry.
Allow me to ask this. Are you of the view that Mr. Rowley, by 2025, when we enter into that phase where we may be electing or re-electing or approaching the polls generally, are you of the view that it's healthy for politics and for the the leadership of the PNM to have Dr. Rowley carry it into the next 5-year term? Do you think he's the right person at this time?
That's the view of the PNM. The PNM must make that decision, even though I'm a member of the PNM. The PNM must make. I am not gonna right view, wrong view. That's the view that they're gonna take. So I wouldn't comment on that. I think the party, if they want to put him, that's fine. Do you think the Americans would choose Mr. Trump to take him for the next 4 years? I don't know. It's up to them. I'm not gonna vote for Mr. Trump. So the same is true with Mr. Rowley. If the PNM, the members of the People's National Movement, feel that he should take them into that's their doing. That's their doing. I am not making a comment on that, at least not at this moment. There might be a time when I may want to make a comment on that, but as for now, I'd rather hold my peace.
All right, I'll ask you the same question in another way. You've sat in town house meetings, if I may put it that way, the Monday night meetings, and you've made comments.
No. I don't want to be generous. I attended one meeting of the Monday Night Forum, and they invited me.
Are you of the view that the United National Congress, the opposition, are in a position where they can take this country forward if they assume the reins of power?
If what? Are
you of the view that the United National Congress, if they assume the reins of power, that they have the capacity to take Trinidad and Tobago forward?
Sure. Why not? Why does the PNM have more aptitude than the UNC? I don't understand that. I mean, we start with all these premises. Why won't they? No, I don't have a problem with that. I think, in fact, that's what elections are all about. People make judgments. They make choices. And if you ask from the point of view of the PNM, I think, and I said it, if you listen to my speech, that both the People's National Movement and the UNC, I said in front of Ms. Kamala, have failed black people. I've said it very openly. And that any new party or any new elections, if you're asking me, each of that party should have some proposal to talk about how they're going to alleviate the conditions of black people, particularly young black men. In fact, that for me is going to be a very major crisis, a major position. So that the fact of the matter is, this notion that only PNM could run I don't go for that stuff. In fact, sometimes part of the problem, if you feel that you're not vulnerable, that you're invulnerable, nobody can move you, you keep on repeating the same old nonsense. And you must know that people are, if you have not fulfilled, throw your behind out. Throw you out. Let them fumble in their own way. But you can't say, whatever I do, you're going to elect me. No. You can't do that. And I'm saying both the PNM, I've said it openly, is in my paper, have failed black people. We're going down and down. We're at the bottom of the economic ladder. Just not even the Venezuelans are going to be better off than us. And what are you doing about it? What are you doing about it?
I am in no way an apologist for the status quo as it exists. I'm simply quoting based on what I read in the editorial of the newspaper. My recent reading was that the central government has indicated that they're going to be reopening some of the civilian conservation corps projects. They're going to be reopening the trade schools. They are also going to invest $100 million in social programs in these depressed areas in order to correct some of the wrongs or to arrest the decline. Are you of the view that that level of investment is a good start, if not sufficient, moving forward to improve the position of the black people?
How long has the PNM been in power?
Well, apart from the 30 consecutive years between
I'm talking about the last iteration.
8 years.
I'm talking about 20 years.
The last
They've
8
been
years.
in power for 8 years.
Yes, 8 years.
They just got up in the morning and said, we're going to do this and it's going to change? No. Spending the money is one thing. It has to be spent. You have to come with a program. It doesn't. How are you going to spend it? You give one a little county something. You have no plans. It's just that they have no crime prime. The PNM does not have a crime plan. All right? Now, the problem of black people in those communities, like, say, Laventil, and Movantes, there are no jobs. There's no major industry in any of those places. Until you have a major industry, be it in whatever, electronic or high, whatever, whatever it is, that people, I happen to believe, as perhaps Karl Marx does, that ultimately we are economic beings. You cannot be moral, etc., if you don't have a job. And the problem is not throwing a million. What are you going to do the million? You're going to get here's 10, here's 15? So that is too little, too late, and it's just like everything else. Hasakara, I just decide. You don't plan that way.
All right.
It seems to me that if the PLM was serious in these matters, they would have been talking about what industries. Give me one or two industries we put in these places so people begin to talk about jobs. Now, why is that important? Work is not just making money. Work is the habits. You work at what show program you're on. So you get up in the morning, you take a shower, you clean your shoes, you brush your teeth, you get ready for your program. That life is purposeful. Even I just get him money, come in studio, work happy, and keep on thieving. So the problem is not civilian corps and all that kind of stuff. Towards what end are those corps going? What are the ends? Just work too? But it's the same thing with CPAP. People sit at the road and, they've been that for the rest of their lives. They ain't going no place with CPAP. So I'm saying that's not the problem. And if you had a toe that was rotting and you cut off the toe, then another toe got rotted and you cut off the next toe. Next time you cut off your foot, unless you get to the source of the problem. And if the source of the problem is diabetes, you better treat the diabetes, not the toes. You might treat the toes, but you got to get to the source. Philosophy says you get to the essence of the phenomenon, the essence of the thing. Just making things happen.
Right.
So saying you're going to have civilian corner, there's not a worked out program. There's no work out. It's just a Viking thing. I'm going to throw some money in. I just got one morning. I'll give $1 million and send police in and send ex-soldiers. That is not a plan.
Professor Cudjoe.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Rowley also indicated that, and in tandem with what you're saying, he also indicated that he's recognizing that there are certain issues within our society that we need to look at. The education system is one. He's saying that we need to revisit the Concordat. Many people have spoken. You mentioned Croker in terms of him being one of your favorite Calypsonians. He sang a song many years ago about corruption in common entrance. There's a view that Black people, because of the existence of the Concordat, have never really gotten equal opportunity in terms of access to the education that generally is available. Let us put it another way. We have the Catholic schools, the Presbyterian schools, the Hindu schools. They have a concordat. There's a concordat that governs how the state treats with the intake at those schools. They have an automatic 20% that allows their students or their people to get in. In revisiting the Concordat, I don't know if Dr. Rowley in saying that we need to revisit the Concordat means that we have to revisit that relationship in terms of who has access. In no way does the 20% prevent the other 80% of the general population from competing to get into those schools. The philosophy behind the 20% is the Catholic Church and the Hindus and the Presbyterians would have built those institutions. So they're reserving a 20% intake for, if we may put it, their people. Are you of the view that the Concordat in itself prevents Black people from accessing education on the level that other...
Does it prevent Indian students from getting their degrees and their education? It's a question. It's a question.
Yeah, in my view, no, it doesn't prevent them.
Does it prevent Chinese from doing anything?
No.
I mean, don't look. I just said, bear with me. Remember one thing if you never remember anything at all that I say.
Mm-hmm.
When I went to Fordham University, umpteen years, but probably St. John's in 1964. The first course I took was a course on logic. And what is logic is the art of correct thinking. And at Harvard, when I was there as a professor, I took courses. A German guy would come from Germany. We'd probably take 1 day to read 1 page, study it for 2 years. And so in terms of philosophy, what you probably call the correct way of thinking, well, of course, that's logic, is that you have to be sure what's central and what's accidental, what's major and what's minor, what's quality, and these are philosophical categories. If you would have said to me, the central reason why black folks are doing badly on those exams is because of what? Because of the Concordat or the Concordat? I'm not too sure. I did some pieces, if you go back into mine, it's there on Trinity Center. I said many years ago that the teachers were not teaching the children. That's the problem. If you have conscientious teachers teaching, they'll make the kids learn. Now, I understand that the home situation are factors, but you have to have people. I taught at a primary school. I teach now. Teaching never ends. And I would ask, a number of questions. I think that, and one of, it didn't see again, I don't know if you read my piece on the crime plan, in terms of the responsibility of parents.
Yeah.
Parents have to be responsible. But correlationally, the teachers, they're scared of the kids. So it's not a question. They can't, yes, I don't know. I mean, I know my friend, Mr. Lewis, is big on that and so on and so forth. I think that it will help, I suspect. Not that they give them, I don't think the question of whether to give them 20 or 30, but I think it probably entrenches distinctions, just why I'm against proportional representation. Do you have competitive examinations? All right, probably. We have competitive examinations. All right, you make it 5%, we make a difference. But I think what we have to really have is that we have not taken a position that part of our problem is that we're not serious. I had to call today. I call a bank or a credit union. Nobody answered the phone. Call customer service. Call the thing. We are not responsible. Then I call a bank and nobody will answer me. We are not responsible. We are not. I understand now in terms of some schools that not the vacation, the recess time. It's not in the specs, so nobody looks over the kids during recess. It's not in your specs. Well, I mean, you can do all that nonsense, but we've seen the results.
Yeah.
And black people are suffering. But I'm got to be fair. I think the parents have a larger role to play in what they do. So, for example, instead of giving them $100 million, maybe you need to have some school centers, which I argued. For example, when kids come out at 3 o'clock, they stay there and do the homework. Maybe you have to be more disciplined. All right, maybe that's one way to attack the problem, that they're not performing as well. One reason why the other kids perform, they go to lessons, of course, because their mothers and their parents have the money to send them to lessons. And so maybe what the government could be doing is putting up certain incentives. We had the National Association for the Empowerment of African People. We put together a center for people to come to school. We never get any help from the government. Never get any help from them. We just talk. We just talk. Why? There's no planning. We don't plan. And that's our problem. You don't say, I'll give $100 million. You say, okay, what is the plan? Let's get a plan first. If you want more educate, for example, in terms of these schools that are failing, they call them failing schools. Do you have a way where we could begin to have them do extra lessons? All right? Or give them a meal in the morning so they're ready for this school? It has to be planned out. It's not a Viking.
All right.
And I ask you again.
Let me interject a little bit, please. Professor Cudjoe, I'm
Who's
involved. I'm the anchor in the studio.
Okay, so you want to ask me a question?
Yes.
Okay,
I just want to
sorry,
interject
I didn't know who you were.
I'm,
You didn't introduce yourself, so I didn't know you were.
well, I'm David McIntyre. You can see it on your screen.
I don't know that, Mr. David. I'm talking to Fareed. I am not aware of that. But go ahead. Get to the question.
Yes, but I too am very concerned about the social structure for the youths in particular, and I too find that there's more talk than anything else, where we are to move the nation forward. I've heard and I've gone through some of your documentaries, some of your analyses of what is happening from ground up. Is there a problem with the powers that be are not taking governance from the ground up instead
I
of
don't
like
understand. I mean,
top
that they
to
should be
bottom?
teaching.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Education.
Well, I'm talking across the board because vocation can play a vital role too within the education
You mean
system.
vocational classes?
Yes, all of that tied in because in vocation there's a lot of academic work that you can do.
Oh yeah,
What
no.
I'm saying, what I'm saying is that okay, you are. Would you agree
Mhm.
that governance of especially like of Trinidad and Tobago should be like from ground up? Why don't the people that are in authority visit these communities and find out what is the real need of the communities and
Well, if
govern
you
that way
remember,
up?
if you read my paper on crime,
Mhm.
I did 16 points,
Yeah.
and what I condemned Mr. Rowley and them for is that Williams in 1963 had something called Meet the People. It's about 95. We went to every community. We don't go to communities. I'll go back a little further. If you go, I have a book called Movement of the People, and I talk about the village council as an organ of popular democracy. We do not analyze anything. We only there to make money. How much money Williams make? When Williams did, how much money he had? Sheila James, big scholar, died in Brixton. He had nothing. I'm willing to bet that most of the people in the government and ministry, all of them are millionaires. Or the wife had companies. And they're all making millions. They're not concerned about the people. And in Trinidad and Tobago, when you make it, you move out of your community. So you go to Westmoreland or a big house. Where's Mr. Hines living? Hello, Mr. McIntyre.
Yes, I know. He lives in my.
Just silence him.
Huh?
No, it's not silencing me. I'm enjoying what he's saying
Yeah.
because I understand where he's going with his
What
analysis
I'm
of
saying, I
yeah.
lived in the same place. I built a little house, one house for my mother. I'm from
Mhm.
Tagarigua.
Yeah.
I have no other place to go. People come to my house anytime, talk with me about anything. Eddie Hart, who was the member of Tunapuna, stay in the same house that he was brought up in. The notion is that when you become a parliamentarian, you buy a big car. One of the ministers, I don't know, Mr. Fareed, I want you to check that out, just bought a car for $3.4 million. He's supposed to, and they're supposed to be our servants. We are the masters. So the whole notion is just simply wrong. There is not a question of using your power to help your people in terms of community development. We don't talk about that. The community does not exist. All right? As you said, and I think that's where you're going. We rule from the top up, the top down, not from the bottom up.
Exactly.
And it seems to me, that's why I go back to these communities, give them jobs.
Right.
Let's try, if you said Laventil and Morvan and so on, if we gave them jobs, in other words, by mandate, each of those communities, there's some sort of industry where you gotta go to work and make your money, but also there are spin-offs. You have a little thing shop and so on and so forth. All right, but we don't have that. And what we have, and listen, Mr. McIntyre,
Yes,
if
sir.
we look out, I've made a prediction. Next time we like Haiti,
I know. I follow your writings and stuff.
Right.
My point is, everybody frightened to talk. All right.
Why? Why?
Well, because I don't know, they have a job or something like that. We don't talk. If somebody were to invade Trinidad and Tobago, everybody could run and hide in the house. If it's still happening in Yugoslavia, we don't believe in anything. We don't stand for anything. Tell me, what do we stand for?
All right. Professor Cudjoe.
Was that somebody else?
No, that's me. It's me. It's for reading again. See again. Yeah. So when we examine what Dr. Williams did, and I'm just tweaking the conversation in another direction, but it's relevant. Dr. Williams was of the view, in order to develop the black people who would have been involved in maybe crime, or they need to develop themselves in terms of their mind and in their lifestyle, that he would have developed communities outside of Laventille and Mova and that catchment area. So we had the fluorescence in the early 80s of Maloney.
No, let me get it right, brother. Who put the PM in power? Black people.
Yes.
Black middle class, the teachers.
Right.
Rogers and those guys. And
well, it would have been working class too.
Excuse me?
It would have been working class voters too. Not you say middle class. I'm saying that there's also.
Whatever you want to call it. I'm just simply saying that before PM came into power, if you look at the Indians, why they say that Williams called the schools cow sheds? The doctors and the lawyers and the teachers and so on were black people. From Port of Spain right down to Arima and all in High Street in San Fernando. That was the black middle class.
Right.
And somehow under PM they have been disenfranchised. Ask yourself why. Maloney comes afterwards. Black people had over all the doctors and the lawyers and the teachers.
Yes.
Up until, I'm saying, when they put the PM in power, of course, and I mean, I'm not saying it was deliberate. I'm not making that kind of charge. I mean, one of the things that Williams did, of course, they emphasized workers of the mind. You had to go and get a degree and a PhD and da-da-da-da. And my boy used to talk about vocational education. So he began to demand, sort of hold that back, diminish it. And of course, so the carpenters. When I was growing up, we didn't have no Indian carpenters. I know how old you is. All of the carpenters and the masons and some black people, the Indians were rural folk. They were in Caroni and so on, they work in the rice fields and so on. They were rural. The blacks were urban. An urban person is much more cosmopolitan than a rural person. All right?
Yeah.
Now what you have? A complete reversal. A complete reversal. And you have to ask yourself again, why? Or is there a correlation? What is the problem? And then I'll go to your point, they begin to build the Maloney's and all that kind of stuff. But prior to, the problem has not been in Maloney, is what do you do with it? If you don't have the infrastructure, I taught at a maximum state prison in this country. A maximum state prison, teaching prisoners. But you have to have the desire to transform and to change. Now, the problem is also black teachers. Do black teachers teach the black children? I taught at school. We have to. Do the Indian teachers teach the black kids? Or are they scared of the black kids? I raised that question some years ago. I could give you the documents. But nobody asked any question because we're frightened to talk. You want to harm anybody and all that. Sat Mirage. And I became very friendly. Because Sat told me point blank, so I was in charge of the Mahasabah and the schools. When you go and teach in Sat school, he asks you, are you coming to teach my kids? All right? I ain't want to say that giant fact. Are you coming to teach my? And if you're not going to be a teacher in my school. Don't come with no sort of thing hang out your thing and all that gold thing. You're coming to teach. That's what made the Mahasabah. Look at all the Indian schools now. They haven't getting, Hillview. Are you from up by there?
Yes, I'm from Tunapuna, so I know
they getting most thing this year, is not right?
Yeah.
Because they're serious. Teaching is serious business. You can't come to my school. You have, like Seth always said to me, the teachers, you have sick leave. No, you don't have no sick leave. You have a month sick leave, go take me sick leave. No. If you're sick, you take your sick leave. Don't come to my school and tell me you're taking no month sick leave. That was Seth's position. You vex me with that? He was quite correct. You don't have a sick, I'll come and I want to come. No, you ain't doing that in my school. You will teach after school. Are you willing to stay after school to work with the children? Yes or no? Well, yes, sir. That's why they're doing much better. Now, forget the concordat. It's the commitment to teach and to learn. Unless you do it, I lectured Harvard, Cornell, Cambridge, Oxford, all over the world I've lectured. But you think a little boy from Tiger, you go to lecture just so? You have to prepare yourself. When you get up in the morning, the first thing I do, let me show you a book I read. Give me the camera. I want the camera. What's this book?
Mm-hmm.
How the World Made the West. Yes.
All right. Now, just reading this. I can give you another Hegel book I'm reading right now. You got to read. You got to commit yourself. They can't be, I'll go to the next party tonight, but I'll go to the most party, I'll go to the most wine, a boy and all. You have to set the example. That's why I'm so hard on Kid Rowley. I don't think he sets the example. And I don't think our teachers, I think that, yes, there are a lot of conscientious teachers. I'm not saying they're not. But boy, I think you're a reporter. You have to lift the standards up. You got to prepare for your programs. You want the best song. And that is not happening. Everybody just want to get over. So I think, one, that we have to go back to the communities. And like I saw what they did in Intyre, where they built a big thing for $18 million. And the people who built the center, I could give you the history of the center. It was built in 1965 by lands given to us by Orange Grove. And the people, my mother, they built that place. And the government going to put a big building. Now you got to get a key to go in, and they have a manager making 10,000. And the people who were responsible for building it don't have any part now. So you don't have any community. You have a big building, yeah. So we're more concerned about things. We're more concerned about things, not about people. We're concerned about how much, but not how good. And everything has fallen down. All right. That's my position, Mr. McIntyre.
Thank you, sir. I've listened to a lot of people who talk the same language you talk of, the same ilk, Dr. Vanis James, Dr. Job. I've been privy to be around
Joe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like Joe. All right.
Yeah, I've been privy to be around them, and I've learned a lot. And based on what I'm seeing, especially as we are talking about the Black youth, I think a lot of negligence are involved in the non-progressive way that these youths are now finding themselves in.
Yeah, not much guidance, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. Professor Cudjoe, we have on average every year about 450 murders taking place in this country.
I think it was 600.
Well, the highest number, the highest total we've had in terms of it was 605, I think, 2 years ago in 2022. Last year it would have been 585. So I'm just saying, on average, let's say if we look over the last 10 years, we've had more than 4,000 murders. The detection rate with regard to the police and their resources is just around 10 less than 11%.
Yeah.
In terms of the conviction rate before the courts, in terms of those who were charged, that is even worse than that. So the criminality flourishes and tends to grow and develop and evolve in an environment where the systems that are in place aren't sufficient to discourage persons from entering.
No. Did you read Mr. Henderson this morning when he talked about the DPP? You read the Express this morning?
Yes.
You sure you did?
I read
Mr. McIntyre.
Yeah. Yes,
go
sir.
to page 4. If you have the Express right now, go to about.
I have it in front of me. What
did Mr. Henderson say? What did Henderson say on page 4 or 5 about the DPP bringing weak cases when those guys drop down the thing and walk out? 3 or 4. Yeah. What are the pages there? He said the DPP brings the worst cases. There's no evidence. He's not doing his job. Part of the problem, we're not doing our jobs. That's what Henderson says. You have the page.
Yes, I have it there. I read the article.
What did he say? What did he say?
the police investigations are so weak, and the cases that they've built
The
against
cases that the DPP says, not the
Yeah.
police, the DPP. Now, who is the one that's in charge of bringing criminal cases? The DPP. On my paper, I talked about that.
right.
I don't know if you read my paper, sir.
Yeah.
Now they talk about man and he wealth and he wealth is health and all that bull. And this morning you see it. Henderson says, the judge, the guy is sending. So in other words, you're not doing your work.
But
And that's when you fall down.
Yeah, in fairness to the Director of Public Prosecution's Office, they inherit the investigative files of the police. When a charge is laid, they can only argue the case based on the investigation.
Well, then you have a problem. That's not it. Before the COVID, this is about 34 cases. They're not doing their job. Forget the police. They're not doing their job. And that's what Henderson says. But I said that before that.
Right.
I said that, go to my paper. I don't know if you see my paper, 32 pages.
Yeah.
And I said, even I talk about the Chief Justice. We have to, is it part of, the only way a system flourishes is like a cog or a wheel. Every little part, like this morning you're trying to get me on, right? You had to go in your studio. And Miss Sharia come and say, she helped me out.
Yeah.
And then Mr. McIntyre come in. It's a system. And if your responsibility is to send strong cases, then check and see what the police is doing. But then you have the case of a woman who called the police about a month ago to come and say about something, and he won't say, well, I can't come. He said, well, you don't get a gum, but I can't come. Then hang up the phone on the woman. What did they do? Erla says something, I will speak with her. Your butt should have been gone. Or you should have been reprimanded. Nothing happened, so she don't have to worry about it. Next time you say, okay, just take her car. She's not going to answer. And the husband was so polite. Yes, sir. Yeah. The people who are supposed to be doing their jobs are not doing their jobs. And those in charge are not carrying out the laws. That's our problem. How can somebody say to you, I call you up and say, get a car and come, before you send a cop or send a car right away? Why are you not doing that? They probably were sleeping or something like that.
Are you of the view that the institutions within the state need to be repaired, or more work needs to be done in order to
think
make
the first thing is that people have to be conscientious. You know, during slavery, you had somebody over your back, over your head, or your whip, or your back with a whip, right? You go, and you get up and do a job. And you're looking to see him. He coming now, we go hide. But what a professional is someone who's self-responsible. Whether you have a boss or not boss, you have given that job. I give you to build my house, or you have to mix the concrete, or you have to do my cupboards. You must have that pride. And that pride is what has gone out of us. It's just now a hustle. And that's why that money in that oil boom was so very bad. That we stopped being craftsmen. Everything is money. And you don't get it. I've been in a house, this guy put a pillow for me, only sand, no concrete, no cement at all. I had to break the whole thing down. I'm just saying what happened last month or two. I had to break the whole thing down.
Are we having square pegs?
Huh?
Are there square pegs in round holes?
I don't want to square pegs. That you might be right. But my emphasis is to the degree we could get it happening, and how do you make someone, whatever your job is, every job has its pride, every job is work. Work is dignity. And what we're going to have people going back to is that they're proud when they put a job down, they build a house, or they build a bat, or they do whatever, they're proud of it. And the question of, and I agree with Mr. Rowley here in terms of people being self-responsible. We have to be self-responsible, not just trying to get over all the time and beat people, and that's where we've gone wrong. And I think, of course, the money coming in, that's why they call that the Dutch disease, whatever that money, that whole money that came in 76, all money, and you have a 2 and 3 woman, and you have 2 and 3, whatever you have, and so on and so forth. So everybody big, so that's where we are. But I think it's not, yes, square pegs in a round hole, but also I think people being self-responsible. and taking pride in what you do.
Dr. Rowley had commented on those persons in East Port of Spain. Let us say Nelson Street, George Street, Duncan Street. We have a gang problem in that area. It comes to the surface more in the context of East Port of Spain. Maybe because it's in the capital, it's in Port of Spain itself. So what transpires there impacts more directly, and it's more newsworthy in I guess in the media's sense of things. I'm saying this. Dr. Rowley made a comment that persons should embrace the idea of getting out of quote and unquote squalor. He is stating get out of squalor, meaning I would imagine he's trying to gentrify and urbanize East Port of Spain so much so they will be offering alternative accommodation, or they may be offering alternative accommodation to persons occupying that area. And I would imagine there's a development plan to evolve Port of Spain in that direction. Now, what we had in the past is the many years ago, we have Maloney, we have Malabar, Santa Rosa, La Joquita. So one would imagine that if it is he is inviting persons to get out of squalor, he would want to create other communities, and I would imagine persons will move into those communities. Are you of the view that in moving persons out of areas that they are high risk crime areas, that you give them an opportunity to evolve themselves?
Bad analysis.
Right.
You got to start where you are. Let's go back to the point that you said. For example, if you leave and come to New York, you're bringing your habits to New York, right?
I agree.
If you leave Laventine, you go down, you go to La Joquita, you go down Edinburgh, you kind of the same thing, right? But you start by saying they know who the criminals are. Why does the government not deal with those people? That's the problem. Not the one. Everybody in George Street's not bad. They've been there a long time. If you just said to me, they know who they are, why the hell don't you arrest them? But you let it fester. And you know if you have a foot and it fester, you're going to lose the foot. No, it's just bad analysis. You start with what you got. And if you said you know who the criminals are, you go after them. You take them out. But the cops are corrupted. And the rowdies don't have the gumption. You could cuss people. We don't have the gumption to say, let's take those people out. I know who the 10 top crime people are. I'll get them out of there. I know they're going to have all kinds. Now, sometimes you have to break it in civil laws and so on. But you just said, where was the basic premise? We know who they are. Why do you leave them there and take out other people? Take them out.
If I understand you clearly, the police have removed 200 persons in the last 5 years in terms of police. In 5 years, in terms of police killings.
I mean, you're acting contradictorily or what? You said you know who the criminals are. You say going to the hospital and say, I know you have prostate cancer. I had prostate cancer. The doctor says, listen, we either take out your prostate, or we put radioactive thing inside your prostate, or we wait and see what happens. No, we know if you don't deal with that, you go dead. Because it will invade, once it get out of the prostate thing, it will invade your whole body, you're dead. Once it got there, you're dead. So you had to do what? You got to take it out. They took out my prostate. No, there are other kinds of conditions, Mr. McIntyre. I'm not here, Mr. McIntyre.
Yes, I'm here.
When you take out your prostate, you got two things. You could become impotent.
Yeah.
And I know you let a black man be impotent.
Yeah.
Or you become incontinent. You have to wear pads. There are consequences again. But my point is, if that is poisoning your system, you got to take it out, the whole body going dead. And that's where they're making the mistake. If you, of course, you have to hit the crime. I don't know how you deal with the police and so on. And I brought it up again about 10 years. This guy said they have a rogue element. But I wouldn't handle the problem like that in Port of Spain. I would say, if you know who the criminals are, you either arrest them, you get them out of there, you build a proper maximum set up state prison and keep the butts inside of there. But then you go to the police, and of course, in terms of the correction officer now, they give them all the guns, they give them the cell phone and all the thing. It's a corrupt system. That's the problem. It's corrupt. And you have to have, but you on yourself, if you're going to do that, you must be above board. You must be above board. So you start, I think, again, in philosophy, if you start with the wrong premise, you end up with the wrong answer. So I think what you do in those degree you could do it, you get those people out of there. Because they're simply poisoning the system. For example, you like the PNM, right? Mr. Farid?
No. I don't have any preference.
All right, let me keep up with the thoughts. We have them police vans take all them prisoners every morning from Piarco to Tong. How much you pay them? And these are certain Syrian companies. How much you pay them? Those companies, that company, to take the prisoners from Aruca to Port of Spain every morning with the police going, wee, wee, wee. How much you pay them? What do you think the contract they have? Mr. McIntyre?
But it's millions.
It's millions of dollars. Millions.
No, I will tell you. It's about $200 million every year. 200 million in 5 years is $1 billion.
Yes.
And you add 3 now, you're talking about close to 2. Could you not build a proper, right up behind the prison, build a proper courthouse and a proper jail and all that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Why have you done that? And if you do that, why don't you get some black companies and say, okay, it's $1 billion industry, right? Let me get 2 or 3 black companies. I want to groom some black businessmen and give them a piece of the action. Why don't we do that? What's so hard about that? You're in charge. You call him Sab, whoever in charge. You say, hey, listen now. But I know you had the thing for about 8 years there, boy, and I know you make about close to $2 billion. But I want to share this thing up. I want to get about some black and Indian company in it to make the thing nice. And they go handle their own people and so on. What have we done? You haven't done a thing. Had you built a proper prison, a proper system, a courthouse, you don't spend all that money. And so these guys, you take them out of the community, put them wherever you have to put them. Now you have to watch your prison officers who bringing all that stuff in. But it's a corrupt system. So your premise, Mr. Dear Farid, who I know I remember the PNM, Mr. Farid, is that get them out. Don't take the people out. Because people remain people, you know. And they're not going to change because they go to law. They might because you have a much more open system, presumably, and so on. But that's not the evidence. But there are people who are doing very well in Edinburgh. So that's what I'm saying. You have to go at the problem. All this thing. No, is there a written paper on that? I know they have the East Port of Spain, something they're going to build up. Is there any paper on that? Any discussion on that?
But they've gone very, very, very quiet on that. Of late.
And that's the problem. You don't sit and work anything out. I'm working a book right now on a black guy from Barbados who went to Sierra Leone, and then of course, and then came to Trinidad and so on. I got to go to archives. I go to London. I go to Barbados. I come to Trinidad because you got to work on it. It doesn't happen. But everybody is too busy making money. Look at most of your ministers and them and tell me what they're making, how much money they're making. Maybe they're making no money, but for them who make it. Because that's the more important thing. Making money, but not taking care of people's problems. Yes, sir.
There is a perception that once you're in government, as a member of parliament, and once you're associated with a political party who is in power, that yourself and maybe in a position to gain in some way in terms of government.
Dr. Williams dead as a pauper. James dead as a pauper. He's always making a choice. He's always making a choice. And people choose to make the money. Now, if you're making the money, you can't spend time. You can't spend time taking care of your people. You make a choice. I remember, I know we're coming to an end, that there was an incident about 2 years ago when the Prime Minister on a Thursday at 2 o'clock was going to play golf and he hit somebody, a woman. You remember that?
Yes.
Mr. McIntyre, help me out.
Yes.
And what's the problem? Did he help the woman? He said, well, yes, we get out and take care of her. But that was not my problem. What's the prime minister at 2 o'clock in the day going and play golf? Where he should be working. That's the problem. Then they hit the woman and did he take care and answer? No, and nobody talk about that. I could be out of my class at 2 o'clock playing golf, or you're head of company. You're crazy or what? This guy, where they rusty guy, they brought the big millionaire thing man to the moon and so on and so forth. At 2 o'clock, you should be working. And that's by the example I'm talking about. You got to do your job. And would they help her? And I came out, and I sure she was all right. Hey, you're missing the point.
All right.
You're missing the point. At 2 o'clock, you should be in your office working. And Manning would have been working in his office. And Eric Williams in their office working to deal with the problems of their people. Mr. Farid, that's the problem.
Keith Rowley was recently quoted as stating that he thinks too much emphasis is being placed on crime, that we're only talking about crime when we should be looking at our revenue sources and developing ourselves or economic belts in terms of the price of natural gas doesn't command what it used to, that the Americans they have their own source of natural gas. We can't make money through
What's the point, Mr. Farid? What's the point, Mr. Farid?
My question is this: whilst we all speaking of crime and speaking of developing our persons or people socially, the Prime Minister's eye seems to be in another direction. He seems to be thinking
there again, how much money has gone through our economy, say, for the past 20 years?
Yeah.
Huh? I give a figure. It's about $900 billion. So getting more money doesn't solve anybody's problem. You got more money, but you got more crime. So if you're doing a sort of an analysis, having more money doesn't solve the problem. Point one, it is silly to say that your major problem is getting more and so on and so forth when you know home invasions. You can't go in your home. Man could take over your home. Somebody could kill you and so on. The most important problem, I bet you, if we did a poll, we'll see that they say, what's the most important problem for any citizen is crime. You can't walk the road on Carnival Day. Well, they could walk on Carnival Day. They can't walk on other times. My mother lived in Intyre. She used to go up by her in-laws and could come 9 o'clock and come. Nobody. She can't do it now. The most, and that's what I'm talking again, essence. What's the most important thing in Trinidad and Tobago is not making more money. You could make more money, but you're going to have more crime. It becomes more dangerous. Woman come down from 60, 89-year-old woman killed, 69-year-old killed, and you're saying that we have one more. No, that's a bad analysis. The most, and I stand by that, I could argue to any place, and I know I'll be supported. The most important problem to any person in Trinidad and Tobago is the security of their home and their property. And what I'm saying, Robbie, is wrong. I started by giving the example of an ex-slave in 1899 who said that was not ex-slave, was a grandson of a slave, that the most important problem in any country is the protection of their safety and their property. Without that, you don't have a society. You go tell me the fellow from Haiti say you're going to get more money. He went to get a troop in Kenya, right? What the president name? Mr. Farid? President of Haiti. Yeah?
Ariel Henry.
Henry, where he went? To Kenya to get more things? He can't even go back in your own country. He can't even go back by saying crime is not the problem. Are you talking nonsense?
Why don't the government? Why the government who are empowered don't listen to people like you and Dr. Vaness James and
they don't listen because they have the money. They got the cars. They got the bus route, whatever. And so they don't have to listen. They don't have to listen. But I don't want anything from them. And the point is that they do not think. They do not. Vaness read. Job read. Eric Williams read. James read. Them fellas ain't about that. It's how they're going to pick up. How much, Mr. What's his name? Alwari? Minister talking about communities. What Alwari is? Minister what?
He's a minister of
Local government now. He's
local
local government. He was the Attorney General until.
No, I confused about local government. Me, I know what I'm talking about. I know I talk. He's the minister of local government.
Yeah.
How much money is speaking? How much rent he has make?
Only 100 and something million a year.
I mean, how could he deal with, if you're making that, I mean, how could he deal with the question of communities? What is the last community he visited?
Well,
Man dead in every day. You ever go to anybody's funeral or go and see what the parents all that,
I'm sure he'll be doing that in the 12 months leading up to the election. We still have 18 months to go.
but that's it again, and you'll vote for him for that, Mr. Farid?
No, not at all. But I'm simply just putting it in space.
Now these guys, listen, man. Those guys are jokers, man, and they're only concerned about their own pockets, and they're only concerned about how much I have. But even can I even spend it? I don't see when they go on the dead, and I don't see a truck crying all the money by the side and say, "I'm going to deposit this money inside of the," And they haven't understood that the most life and the perpetuation of life are the most important things in this world. Life and the perpetuation. And if you can't protect that, you're failed as a government.
Well said.
Professor Cudjoe, it's 6 o'clock. We thank you so much for making yourself available to us. It was an endearing conversation, and you said some strong things.
Well, I said openly, and I'm afraid I was wrong.
No, you always do. I know you always do. You've been saying it for years now.
Yeah, no. It's just that we're not serious. I mean, I love these guys. I mean, I love Rowley. I think he's a lovely guy. I love him and so on, but I think he's wrong in terms of his analysis. And I would say this to you guys have said publicly, that each party for the next 25 elections should have a program on their manifesto, a separate program that deals with the needs of Black people, particularly of Black youth.
Yes.
As a particular, like, you want to talk about crime. But unless you change the conditions of those people, it's just going to get worse and worse. It don't get better. I do not see it getting better. The example is not there. The incentive is not there. The interest is not there. They got to do that, man.
Well said, Professor.
Thank you, guys. Thank you much.
Thank you so much.
Boy, get me a little pamphlet on crime in Trinidad.
I will get it.
It's only $100. Is that nothing? I mean, go and you get my book on this. You get my book on the slave master.
I have that. I have a copy of that, and I have the other one, Indian Time Coming.
Indian Time I Come.
Yeah. I have that. I have both of them.
Go read them, my man.
I will.
Okay,
Thank you
guys.
so much. Enjoy evening, and hopefully we'll have you again
I
soon.
really appreciate the conversation. I really enjoyed it. It was wonderful.
Same here. We'll invite you again. Hopefully you'll make yourself available again. We will invite you again.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Be good. And tell Sharif for thanks for organizing me, and Mr. McIntyre. Next time I want to hear your voice a little more often.
I will do. Sir.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Okay. Thank
Bye
you
now.
so much, Professor. Thank you, Farid.
Right. All right. Thank you, guys. Be good. Bye now.
Yes. That's it for today's edition of Hard Talk Power 102 Digital Wednesday. Farid will be back next Wednesday for another interesting edition.
Blessings, David. Enjoy the rest.